Have you ever done something small and innocent, only to watch it explode into the biggest storm of your life? That's exactly what happened to me. I thought building a simple greenhouse in my backyard would bring me peace, joy, and fresh vegetables. But instead, it sparked a war with the most stubborn, loud, and dramatic neighbor anyone could ever have, Karen. And this wasn't just an argument over plants or backyard decorations. No, this fight grew into a full-on lawsuit, public embarrassment, and the downfall of the entire HOA's funds. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. I live in a quiet little suburban neighborhood. You know the type. Rows of similar houses, trim lawns, and neighbors who peek out from behind blinds to see who's walking their dog at 7 a.m. At first glance, it looks perfect. But anyone who's ever dealt with an HOA knows the truth. Behind that clean, shiny surface lies rules, regulations, and people who love to enforce them. And at the very top of that list of rule enforcers in my neighborhood was Karen. She wasn't officially the president of the HOA, but she acted like she owned the place. If your grass was 1 inch too long, she'd leave a note. If your Christmas light stayed up one day past December, she'd report you. And if you dared to paint your fence a color she didn't like, she'd send an email to the whole community about it. Now me, I like to keep to myself. I'm not looking for fights. I just wanted to build a small greenhouse in my backyard. Nothing fancy, just a space to grow tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, and maybe some flowers for my wife. It was a project of love, a way to connect with nature, and honestly, it gave me something positive to do after a long day at work. I looked up the HOA rules before I even started. I wanted to make sure I wasn't crossing any lines. And guess what? There was nothing in the rule book against greenhouses. Not one word. There were rules about sheds, fences, and even lawn ornaments, but not greenhouses. That's important. So remember it. So I ordered the materials, spent a few weekends working on it, and finally, it stood tall and beautiful in my backyard. The sunlight sparkled on its glass panels. Inside, tiny green sprouts were already poking out of soil. It felt like my own little paradise. But paradise never lasts long when Karen is around. One morning, as I was watering my plants, I heard a loud voice from the other side of the fence. "What is that hideous thing in your backyard?" I turned, and there she was, Karen, hands on hips, face scrunched like she had just smelled spoiled milk. "It's a greenhouse," I said calmly. Try and be polite. "I'm growing vegetables." Karen rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. "That's not allowed. You can't just throw up random structures in your yard. It ruins the look of the neighborhood." Now remember, greenhouses weren't against the rules. I explained that to her. But Karen didn't care about rules. Karen cared about control. She snapped back. "If it's not in the rules, then I'll make a rule. Just wait and see." And oh boy, did she mean it. Within days, I started getting official-looking letters from the HOA saying my greenhouse violated community standards. They demanded I take it down immediately or face fines. But here's the kicker. When I asked them to show me the exact rule I had broken, they couldn't. They danced around the question, saying things like neighborhood uniformity and aesthetic balance, but never pointed to an actual rule. That's when I realized Karen was behind it. She had convinced the HOA board to target me personally, all because she didn't like the sight of my greenhouse. At first, I thought maybe I should just give in, tear it down, avoid the drama, live peacefully. But then I remembered something important. Bullies don't stop when you give them what they want. They just keep pushing. And Karen was the ultimate bully. So I decided to fight back. I started gathering evidence. I kept every letter, every email, and even recorded conversations where Karen admitted she just didn't like my greenhouse. I also took photos of other houses in the neighborhood that had sheds, gazebos, and even above-ground pools, none of which were in the rules either, yet nobody complained. The more I dug, the more I realized Karen wasn't just being unfair. She was abusing her power. And I wasn't the only one she had targeted. Other neighbors told me stories about her bullying tactics, how she'd fine them for silly things, and how she threatened to sue anyone who challenged her. Finally, after weeks of back and forth, Karen took it to the next level. The HOA, under her influence, actually filed a lawsuit against me. They wanted me to remove the greenhouse, pay fines, and cover their legal fees. At first, I was shocked. A lawsuit over a greenhouse? It felt ridiculous. But then, I realized something important. This was my chance to expose her. I hired a lawyer, and we started preparing for court. My lawyer looked over the HOA documents and immediately spotted the problem. "There's no rule against greenhouses," he said. "This case is weak. If anything, they're wasting the HOA's funds by suing you." And that's exactly what happened. The lawsuit dragged on for months. Karen showed up to every hearing, arms crossed, lips pursed, glaring at me like I was the devil himself. She brought evidence that was laughable, like blurry photos of my greenhouse from her backyard and emails where she wrote dramatic lines like, "This eyesore is destroying the community spirit." Meanwhile, my lawyer calmly laid out the facts. No rules were broken, no laws were violated, and the HOA had no grounds to demand anything from me. The judge listened carefully, and when the decision finally came, it was crystal clear I had done nothing wrong. But here's the twist. Because the HOA filed a baseless lawsuit, they had to cover all the legal costs. That meant every dollar spent on this ridiculous fight came out of the HOA's funds. The money that was supposed to be used for neighborhood maintenance, community events, and improvements? Gone. Wasted. All because of Karen. When the news spread, the neighborhood erupted. People were furious. They realized Karen's personal vendetta had drained the HOA's savings, leaving nothing for real community needs. And for the first time, Karen wasn't the one pointing fingers. She was the one being pointed at. I wish I could say she learned her lesson. But Karen is Karen. She sulked, blamed everyone else, and avoided me for weeks. The greenhouse, though, it still stands, stronger than ever. Every time I walk into it, I smile, knowing it represents more than just plants. It represents standing up for myself, for fairness, and for what's right. And if there's one lesson I learned from all of this, it's this. Never let a bully decide what you can and cannot do with your own life, especially when the rules are on your side. So, the next time someone tries to control you, remember my greenhouse. Remember Karen. And remember that sometimes standing your ground isn't just about protecting your plants. It's about protecting your peace, your freedom, and your dignity. And hey, if you found this story unbelievable, just wait until you hear what happened next, because the fallout from this battle didn't just end with the HOA losing their funds. Oh no, it got even messier, and trust me, you won't want to miss that part. Backhand index pointing right, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, because section 2 of this story will blow your mind. Have you ever seen someone lose a battle so badly that it shakes their entire world? That's exactly what happened after Karen's lawsuit against me collapsed. You'd think that after wasting all the HOA's money, she would step back, stay quiet, and maybe even apologize. But no, this was Karen. And Karen doesn't go down without trying to drag everyone else down with her. The day after the judge ruled in my favor, I walked into my greenhouse with the biggest smile on my face. The sunlight poured through the glass. My tomato plants were growing strong, and for once, I felt at peace. But outside those walls, chaos was brewing. Word spread through the neighborhood faster than wildfire. People were shocked to hear that the HOA had spent thousands of dollars, our community's money, on a lawsuit that had no chance of winning. They were angry. People had been paying their dues for years, thinking the funds were for playground repairs, landscaping, and holiday events. Now, thanks to Karen, every dollar was gone. And guess what? The HOA had to raise monthly fees to recover. Imagine paying extra money just because one person decided to chase her personal vendetta. That's when the neighbors finally snapped. One by one, people started showing up at HOA meetings. Normally, only a handful of folks would attend. But now, the room was packed. Standing room only. Everyone wanted answers. Everyone wanted to know how Karen had convinced the board to waste their money on something so petty. Karen, of course, showed up too. She strutted in with her nose in the air like she hadn't just bankrupted the HOA. She tried to explain herself, saying things like, "I was only protecting the beauty of our community. And if we allow one greenhouse, what's next? chicken coops, junkyards. But nobody was buying anymore. People shouted back at her, demanding to know why she targeted me when so many others had sheds, gazebos, and even inflatable pools. Some neighbors even brought photos of their own yards as proof. They asked, "Why didn't you come after us, Karen? Why only him?" The truth was clear. This wasn't about rules. This was about control. This was about Karen wanting power. The HOA board, embarrassed and desperate, tried to distance themselves from her. They claimed she had pressured them into pursuing the lawsuit, but the damage was done. Trust was gone. People were furious, and they wanted change. That's when a group of neighbors decided enough was enough. They started a petition to remove Karen from the board entirely. And not only that, they wanted new leadership for the HOA. They wanted people who actually care about the community, not about power trips and personal grudges. Karen panicked. For years, she had ruled the neighborhood with fear and intimidation. But now, the tables had turned. People were no longer afraid of her. They were fed up. And here's the funny part. Karen started blaming me. She told anyone who would listen that I had turned the community against her. She called me a troublemaker, a liar, even a neighborhood criminal. But the more she talked, the worse she looked. Because while she was busy pointing fingers, I was busy helping my neighbors. I shared fresh vegetables from my greenhouse. I offered tips on growing plants. I even helped one neighbor set up a small herb garden. Slowly but surely, people saw me not as a villain Karen painted me to be, but as a normal guy who just wanted to live peacefully. The petition against Karen grew stronger. Signatures piled up. At the next HOA meeting, the board had no choice but to vote. And just like that, Karen was removed from her position. Now, you'd think that would be the end of it. Karen was out, my greenhouse was safe, and the neighborhood finally had a chance to heal. But here's the thing about people like Karen. They don't know how to let go. She started spreading rumors. She told people I had bribed the judge. She claimed my greenhouse was infested with bugs that were spreading into other yards. She even went as far as writing anonymous letters, accusing me of breaking zoning laws. But every time she tried to stir up trouble, it backfired. The city came to inspect my greenhouse after one of her false reports. And guess what? They said it was perfectly fine. No violations. No issues. Just a healthy, legal greenhouse. At this point, Karen had become a joke. People rolled their eyes when she walked by. Kids whispered and laughed about her behind her back. She had gone from being feared to being pitied. And me? I kept living my life. Every time I stepped into my greenhouse, I felt proud. Not just because of the plants growing inside, but because of what it represented. It represented standing up for myself. It represented the downfall of a bully. It represented a community finally waking up to the truth. But here's the part that still amazes me. Months later, the HOA finally revealed the full financial report. The lawsuit had cost so much money that they had to cancel every single community project for the year. No new playground equipment. No landscaping. No holiday party. All gone. And people didn't forget who was responsible. Karen became a symbol of waste, of greed, of everything wrong with the HOA. Even though she no longer had power, her reputation was ruined forever. Sometimes I look back and wonder, what if I had just torn down the greenhouse when she first complained? What if I had stayed quiet, avoided the fight, and given her what she wanted? Sure, I might have avoided the stress. But I also would have missed the chance to stand up, not just for myself, but for everyone in the neighborhood who had suffered under her control. Because here's the truth. When you stand up to a bully, you're not just fighting for yourself. You're showing others that they don't have to live in fear either. And that's the lesson I want you to take away from my story. Sometimes doing the right thing feels exhausting. Sometimes it feels easier to just stay quiet. But if you let people like Karen win, they'll keep winning. They'll keep pushing, keep controlling, keep draining the life out of everything around them. So if you're dealing with your own Karen, whether it's a neighbor, a coworker, or even someone in your family, remember my greenhouse. Remember how one small stand turned into a bigger change. Remember that you don't have to accept unfair treatment. Because at the end of the day, your peace, your happiness, and your freedom are worth fighting for. And if you ever feel alone in that fight, just know you're not. There are people out there cheering for you, even if you don't see them yet. So, let me ask you this. What would you do if someone tried to control your life the way Karen tried to control mine? Would you back down, or would you fight back? Backhand and deck pointing right if this story inspired you. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and share with someone who might need the courage to stand up for themselves. Because trust me, the battle might be hard, but the victory is always worth it.